Welcome to Wise Life. After 60, so grateful to have you here. You know, I've had conversations over the years with women who carry themselves with so much grace, and yet, beneath that, there's often a quiet hesitation when it comes to their bodies. Not loud, not obvious, just a small instinct to cover up, to dim the light, to turn slightly away, and I understand that feeling more than you might think. What's interesting is this. Many of the very things women become most aware of over time are not the things older men focus on at all. In fact, quite often, they're the exact details that draw a man closer, the ones he notices in a quiet, appreciative way, even if he never says it out loud. This video, we're going to explore 10 of those things, the ones you may have quietly felt unsure about, things that, in truth, belong to 5 deeper forms of attraction most women never realize they already have. Once you begin to see this clearly, something shifts. You may start to look at yourself with a little more softness, a little more ease, because sometimes what you overlook is exactly what someone else treasures. So if these kinds of conversations speak to you, you might find a lot of comfort here, and you're always welcome to stay connected by subscribing to the channel. And if you look closely, the first place this shows up is somewhere you may have spent years trying not to be seen. Your natural softness. Have you ever noticed how the parts of yourself you worry about the most are often the parts someone else feels the most comfort in? I remember sitting across from a woman once, her hands gently resting in her lap, speaking almost in a whisper about how she avoided certain clothes, how she would instinctively pull in her stomach or shift her body just slightly when someone got too close. Not because anyone told her to, but because somewhere along the way she learned those areas weren't quite right. And yet what I've seen time and time again is something very different. Those softer places, the gentle curve of a stomach that has lived, the fullness of thighs that carry warmth, the natural texture of skin that no longer tries to be something it's not. They don't create distance, they create ease. There's a quiet invitation in that softness, something that says, you can relax here. Older men especially don't experience these details the way you might imagine. They're not measuring, comparing, or scanning for perfection. What they feel is something more immediate, a sense of comfort, of closeness, of something real beneath their hands. That softness isn't seen as a flaw, it's felt as warmth. It softens the moment, slows it down, makes it human. Perfection, in truth, can feel distant. It can feel like something to admire from afar, but not always something to rest in. Softness, on the other hand, has a way of drawing people closer without effort. It removes pressure, it replaces performance with presence. And maybe that's the part no one really says out loud, that what you've been trying to tighten, hide, or smooth away may actually be the very thing that makes someone feel at home with you. Because attraction, especially later in life, isn't built on flawless lines. It's built on how a person feels when they're near you, how their body settles, how their mind quiets, how the moment becomes easier to stay in. And often, that begins right there in the softness you've learned to question. But this isn't the only place where that quiet misunderstanding lives. Sometimes it shows up in the smallest details you spent years trying to hide. Your natural details. Why is it that the smallest details about ourselves can sometimes feel like the biggest things in the room? It's a quiet habit where the mind narrows its focus. A faint stretch mark, a slight change in skin, a texture that doesn't feel as smooth as it once did. None of these things ask for attention. And yet, somehow, they begin to take it anyway. And over time, without realizing it, you start to see yourself through that narrow frame, as if those tiny details are what others will notice first. But that's rarely how it works. Most people don't experience you in fragments. They don't pause on a single line or a small imperfection. What they feel instead is something much broader, the overall impression, the emotional tone, the sense of who you are when you're simply there, being yourself. Those natural details, stretch marks, small variations in your skin, the little changes that come with time, they don't carry the meaning you've quietly assigned to them. They're not signals of something lacking. They're simply part of a living, changing body. Interestingly enough, what feels magnified up close tends to fade when seen from a natural distance. Not because it's hidden, but because it was never meant to stand alone in the first place. So much of how you see yourself comes from standing too close, looking too carefully for too long, at something that was never meant to define you. Let me ask you something, just gently. Have you ever spent time worrying about a small detail, only to realize later it didn't matter the way you thought it did? If that resonates with you, I'd love to hear your experience. Sometimes sharing those small realizations can bring a surprising kind of relief, not just to you, but to someone else. Listening quietly, because when you step back even just a little, something begins to soften. You start to see yourself as a whole again. Not a collection of details, but a presence, a feeling, a person. And once that shift happens, another truth becomes easier to see. There was never just one right way for a body to look in the first place, and maybe there never needed to be. Your natural shape who decided there was only one way a body should look. And why did so many of us quietly agree to it? It's something I've wondered about more as the years have passed. That invisible standard. The one that suggests there's a right shape, a right weight, a certain set of features that somehow defines what is attractive. Never spoken out loud in a single sentence, but it lingers in images, in memories, in comparisons we didn't even realize we were making. And without meaning to, many women begin measuring themselves against something that was never truly fixed to begin with. But real attraction doesn't work that way. If you've lived long enough, you start to notice something simple, almost obvious once you see it clearly. Different people are drawn to different things. One person finds comfort in softness, another in structure, another in the way someone moves or carries themselves. There isn't one shape that holds all the answers, because people themselves are not all the same. What matters more, often quietly and without announcement, is how you inhabit your own body. There's a difference between someone who feels at ease in themselves and someone who is constantly adjusting, correcting, second-guessing. That difference isn't about size or proportion. It's about presence. It's about whether your body feels like a place you can rest in or a place you're trying to escape from. And people can sense that even if they don't consciously name it. I've noticed that when a woman stops trying to match a standard, something in her softens, not in a physical sense, but in the way she moves, the way she exists in a moment. There's less hesitation, less tension. She isn't asking for approval anymore. She's simply there. And that, more than any specific feature, has a quiet pull to it, because comfort is contagious. When you're at ease in your own body, others begin to feel at ease around you too. The interaction becomes lighter, more natural, less like a performance that needs to be maintained. So the question was never really about whether your body fits a certain image. And when that happens, something else begins to show itself. Not in the way you look, but in the way you appear, naturally, without trying to shape the moment too tightly. Your unfiltered presence, how you show up naturally. What if the most captivating version of you is the one that shows up when you stop trying to be seen a certain way? It's a quiet shift, and it doesn't happen all at once. For many years, it can feel almost automatic. The small adjustments, the subtle corrections, the way you hold yourself just a little differently when you're aware of being looked at. Not out of vanity, but out of habit, out of wanting to present yourself well. There's nothing wrong with that. But something interesting happens in the moments when that effort softens, when you're not thinking about how you look, when you're simply present in what you're feeling. Maybe it's a laugh that comes out a little louder than expected, or the way you relax into a conversation without trying to manage every expression. Those moments aren't polished, but they're real, and real has a kind of quiet magnetism to it. When you stop filtering yourself, even just a little, you give the other person something they can actually connect to. Not an image, not a version carefully put together, but you as you are in that moment. And that creates a different kind of closeness. One that doesn't need to be maintained or protected. I've noticed that people don't remember perfection nearly as much as they remember presence. They remember how easy it felt to be around someone, how natural the interaction was, how there was no pressure to be anything other than what the moment asked for. That kind of presence doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go of it. So let me ask you something in a very simple way. When do you feel most like yourself? The version of you that doesn't need to adjust or perform? I'd really love to hear that, because sometimes the answer to that question reveals more about your natural attractiveness than anything else ever could. And what's beautiful is this. That same truth holds steady, even as life moves forward and your body continues to change in its own quiet ways. Your evolving body, age, and life it changes. What happens when a body stops trying to go backward and simply continues forward? There's a quiet fear that often lingers beneath the surface. The belief that as the body changes with time, something essential is being lost. That attraction belongs to an earlier version, a younger version, a version that no longer exists in the same way, but that perspective leaves out something important. A body doesn't just change, it gathers, it carries, it reflects years of living, feeling, and experiencing. The softness, the lines, the shifts in shape, none of these arrive randomly. They come from time, from moments, from a life that has actually been lived. And there is a kind of depth in that which cannot be recreated artificially. Attraction, especially later in life, begins to move away from surface-level impressions. It becomes quieter, more grounded, less about appearance as an isolated image, and more about what that presence represents. A body at this stage doesn't just exist visually. It tells a story even without words. There's something undeniably different about being with someone who has lived through seasons, who has known change, loss, growth, renewal. That history doesn't make a person less attractive. It adds weight to their presence. It creates a sense of substance that wasn't there before. The idea that attractiveness fades assumes that value is tied only to what is new or untouched. But life doesn't work that way. Value often deepens over time, becomes quieter, less obvious, but far more meaningful to those who know how to recognize it. So the body you have now isn't something that replaced who you were. It is the continuation of everything you've been. And when that shift in perspective happens, something softens internally. The need to compare, to measure against the past, to hold on to a former version, it begins to loosen its grip, because attraction was never about staying the same. It was always about how fully a person inhabits who they are, at every stage. And perhaps that is where everything comes together, not in trying to return to what was, but in quietly allowing what is to be enough. Maybe the truth is simpler than you thought. You don't actually have 10 problems to fix. What you have are just a few natural parts of your body that you've been seeing through a much harsher lens than anyone else ever would. The way you judge yourself isn't the way others experience you, and that shift matters more than anything, because attraction doesn't start with changing your body. It starts with changing how you relate to it. When you stop trying to hide, control, or correct every little detail, something changes. You relax, you show up differently, and that quiet confidence becomes the thing people feel when they're around you. You don't need a different body, you need a different perspective. And once that clicks, everything feels lighter and naturally more attractive. If this gave you a new way to see yourself, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more insights like this.